Hello.
Hello. How are you
How's
doing,
it
man?
going? Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Nice to talk to you in person here.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
Anytime, man. Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're no problem. How have you been today? You've been
Oh, not
talking.
too bad.
How many people did you talk to so far?
Oh, just one.
This one. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So, uh, we didn't really have an agenda when I just said,
Good.
sure, I'll talk. We'll just make it spontaneous. Um, I've given quite a number of talks lately on my book, Timeless Luminosity, and I know you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Uh, you sounded interested in that, and I think
Yeah, I was actually gonna say the first thing I was gonna say, if there was more than a few moments of silence, I was gonna say, since some people only watch, the first 5 or 10 minutes of a YouTube video, I was gonna say, let's quickly, shamelessly plug your book before we continue, just
I
for
I
that
can
audience.
I can do that.
So we're on the same page
Oh,
there. I like that.
yeah. All right. Well, great. So this is my book, Timeless Luminosity. And the reason that I wrote this book is I had a near-death experience in 2016.
Mm.
And it was really the full kind of experience where you become the light and self disappears. And it was amazing. Time disappeared, everything. Yeah, but it
Wow.
wasn't nothing, but it was
Good.
indescribable, absolutely indescribable. So I wrote this book in both prose and in poetry, and the
Perfect.
prose is just basically uh, sort of explaining the basic experience that I had in just a few chapters, and then the poetry. I was After my near-death experience, I was inspired uh, to write poetry that would help people to awaken, because
Oh
I
wow. Yeah.
realized that inexplicable light, that luminosity, it's it's everywhere. It's all things. It's beyond all things, and we can awaken to that anytime we want. We just need to be inspired to do that.
Yeah.
We need to have the motivation for awakening. And so I wrote that, and a lot of the poetry is about death, uh, but a lot of it's kind of humorous too.
Cool. Cool.
I
Perfect.
had
I
people
love
get a
that.
hold of
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and they said that wow, they didn't expect jokes in the middle of
Yeah.
a poem, and things
Yeah. I
that
love
just
that
made them
though.
laugh.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
um,
Excellent.
death is very serious and all, but I came back with the understanding that we're indestructible. Our lives are kind of a wonderful opportunity for awakening. It's not just a miserable experience like a lot of people kind of dwell on. Certainly, we all have
Yeah.
anxiety and difficulties in life,
Right.
and there's struggles and all of that.
I
But
used
it's
to I
all
used to ask people a little joke question. I usually did it back when I was a seeker. I don't do it as much now, but once in a while. It's like a question from the perspective of God, if you will, or from the absolute awareness. It's like, life ain't so bad, is it?
yeah, right.
I made you a whole universe, a whole world. It's not all bad, right? You
Why is
enjoyed
everyone
some of it? Oh
complaining?
good. Oh thank God you enjoyed some of it. So your experience
Exactly.
that you had in 2016, was that, did you have a near-death experience and a non-dual awakening in one experience, or did you have a non-dual awakening prior to or after that experience, or how would you talk
Oh,
about those two sides
okay.
of things?
Well, it's a little bit convoluted, and a little bit of a history with introspection and meditation. I in 2015. I'm a Dzogchen practitioner.
Oh yeah, perfect. I thought so. Yeah.
So, yep.
Excellent.
So you've seen some of my posts, and Namkhai Narbu was one of my root teachers. The teacher who actually introduced me to the nature of mind is Keith Dowman, who is
Oh, okay. Yeah.
still giving retreats.
I
And
thought I saw a picture of you and him, and I thought, oh, cool.
yep, yep.
So he
And
threaded your needle type of deal. He
he
gave you the
did.
pointing out instructions. Very
He
cool.
did. He did. And I had been a very serious Buddhist practitioner for many years, of Vajrayana practitioner.
Mm.
And everything about Buddhism was like, wow, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. And
I
just
think
wow,
Buddhism
wow,
saved my
wow.
life a few times. I'll be honest.
That's
Yeah,
it. Doesn't
I
that
think so.
doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Because I had, as a seeker, I had very kind of bipolar tendencies, and like, so of course things like Zen and just Buddhism in general, Tibetan Buddhism, of course
Brings
they're
you
gonna be,
back.
middle way, it's like, so of course it saved my life multiple times. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah. Oh,
just
sure.
reminders to, yeah, or to it'll say,
Yeah.
it'll talk about the emotions being subtle, being a good thing instead of being,
Yep. Yep.
and yeah, after awakening, all that's effortless, but prior to that, it was very helpful.
Yes. Well, it's yeah, I mean, it's all about discovery and opening your heart and mind. I know I read something on your Facebook thread about how you had an experience where everything just became really crisp and clear, and just like you could see the energy and everything.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, that
and
was
that
the
happened.
non-dual awakening in
Yeah.
2017. Yeah.
So that happened to me in kind of a pre-Dzogchen context. It had a lot to do with practices of emptiness,
Mm.
and I just all of a sudden the world looked different. And I
Yeah.
told people that, and they're just kind of looking at me like, "What are you talking about? What is
Suddenly a
what is that?"
masterpiece. It's like when
It's
you see a
so
painting and
beautiful.
it's like photograph quality, or you see a really good photograph and you're like,
Yep.
wow, like that's how you and I assume, see the
Yep.
world
Yep.
pretty much all the time. And
Yeah.
obviously if you see it that way permanently, like the
Yep.
freshness of that, you might not be it might not be that intense to you because now it's your everyday ordinary experience. So
Right.
you know but yeah, at the
Yes.
same time though, it's still there. Isn't that
You know,
beautiful?
it's Dorothy stepping into Oz.
Yeah. Or the way I put it is
It's all of a
when
sudden everything's so
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
Goes from
technocolor,
monochrome to
technicolor,
technicolor.
yeah. Now our world's in technicolor. That's a good
Yep,
way to put it. I love
yep,
that.
yep.
Yeah, exactly right. And another way
Yeah.
I put that is about explaining the emptiness side of things. It's like once you finally get to the curtain and you pull it back, there's no little guy there. Just levers.
It's not
Just
even ever.
levers and buttons and emptiness. There's nobody there.
Right.
No little man,
Yep.
nothing.
Yeah, you're expecting an answer, but the answer's not there.
Yeah, just a shimmering
It's
void, a luminous,
the
timeless emptiness,
the
clarity. Yeah.
luminosity is that's the answer, and it's not an object.
Yeah. And it's not a
So
someone.
that was like my first real uh big experience. But then when I was introduced to the nature of mind, I had what Keith Dowman described as an earthquake, because
Ah,
literally everything was like there and gone and there and gone and there and gone, and just this like just totally shook everything. And so it was like a spiritual earthquake, but it felt like an earthquake. I mean, I was surprised people couldn't feel it, because it was like
the
I'd never.
vibrations, you mean, of the energy.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was just so amazing. And
So that was clearly an energetic experience you had then, yeah? Life force
yeah,
energy.
well, I
Yeah.
I I recognized my own nature. So up until that point, all of my meditative practices were really strongly entrenched with concept. And all of
Mm.
a sudden, when you step into that mirror, now there's
Yeah.
no concept. Now you're just direct experience.
The
It's
empty
just
yet still reflecting mirror.
yep. And there's
Yeah.
no, I mean, these are, sort of similes. These are just examples of
Yeah.
what it's like.
Beautiful
So
metaphors though. I love the
so
Sok Chen metaphors of a
yeah,
rainbow or a mirror. I love that. I love that so
yes.
much.
The
Yeah.
the crystal, the
Yeah.
crystal
Crystal
rock, the
ball.
mirror,
Yeah.
and the yep. So
I use those all the time. I
um
love it.
so that's when I stepped onto the Dzogchen path, which, as Garib
Yeah.
Dorji describes, there's the three statements of Garib Dorji, which but I have it right here. One is direct. It was one is introduced directly to one's own nature. One definitively decides upon this unique state, and then one continues directly with confidence. So I had
Yeah,
stepped
yeah,
down to the statement number one with Keith Dowman.
yeah.
I spent a few months feeling extremely disoriented because now reality was shaken up and gone.
Sure.
Okay, big
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah,
biggest thing
life
that
changing. Yeah.
bigger than anything that had ever happened to me, even birth. It was a
So would you
much
call that
different.
what you're calling an earthquake? Would you call that the non-dual shift, or would you call that a second awakening, or would you call that a deepening of awakening? How would you describe that? Is
Well,
that what you would think is as enlightenment, or would you think that that's like a second non-dual shift? How would you explain that exactly?
I would say um, the I would say probably the non-dual awakening was what happened when I realized emptiness.
In
Okay,
in the near-death experience?
because no,
Before that.
before I encountered Dzogchen, because I think that would probably be
Yeah.
in that category because I had the knowledge of emptiness,
Yeah.
but I'd not yet realized my true nature. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's extremely profound,
I know what you mean.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know,
So was there like a
you can't
deepening of
even explain
compassion
it.
at that point? Like, so you realized emptiness, and
Hmm.
then as you deepen that emptiness, you suddenly perhaps more compassion, that type of thing,
Yes.
more of an
So
energetic phenomena type experience.
so yeah, perhaps the first understanding of emptiness, and I have a hard time conceptualizing this. By the way, I'm trying to
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
backpedal
Yeah.
and compare it to
Yeah.
the boomies, the different
Right. Right.
stages of a bodhisattva, and there's the stages of a Buddha.
Yeah.
So you know we are all Buddhas.
Yeah.
That's who we really are. So how do you categorize the level of awakening? It's a
Right.
little bit
Right.
a little
Right.
bit difficult
Exactly.
because even if we're deeply confused, we still have those glimpses of our Buddha nature, that those
Right.
moments of trauma, moments of
Yeah.
deep understanding. All of a sudden, there's this luminous something that we can't
Or even
describe.
just being in the flow state, even the average
Yeah.
seeker who never even thinks about these things regularly enters into the awakened state. They just don't notice it.
Yes.
And they don't conceptualize it as such.
Yep.
I have another question begging to ask itself real quick here.
Yeah. Sure.
And that is, it's regarding Sogchen, and it's like I had read about Sogchen and things, but it wasn't until awakening that suddenly it became tremendously relevant. And my question is, do you view Sogchen as a practice only for those who have already awakened?
Well,
Like, is it
Dzogchen,
primarily only a post-awakening practice? I guess is my question.
right. Well, there are a lot of people who call themselves Dzogchen practitioners, but the only way to be a Dzogchen practitioner is to have realized the nature of mind.
Exactly.
Because if you haven't realized the nature of mind, then you're missing Dzogchen. Dzogchen
Yeah.
means nature of mind. So
Right.
so when you enter the Dzogchen, the first thing that you start to do is you start to become accustomed to that, because now
Right.
up until then everything's been mind, but now you have the nature of mind and you're not used to that. We have this long history, countless lifetimes, beginningless beginnings. We've been working with mind. Now we're trying to break that habit and become accustomed to actually what um, the nature of mind is. So Dzogchen practice is just sort of starts baby steps. You're
Yeah.
just trying to, okay, real short sessions, become accustomed to the nature
Right.
of mind, and
Right.
then go back to where you were, then nature of mind, and then come
So we,
back.
we might call it an effortless non-meditation for the already awakened.
Yeah,
Primarily, not
yeah,
only that, but primarily that's
yep,
what it is, right?
yeah. And I have difficulty with the term awakened because there
Yeah.
are stages of awakening.
Sure, sure.
And
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes a person who is awakened can
And by that I
suddenly
mean
be
stream
enthralled
entry,
in,
basically. Yeah.
yeah. So like in the Hinayana traditions, there is the awakening where you have discovered emptiness, and it's nirvana.
Yeah.
But then, if you look at other teachings, other vehicles in, the 9 vehicles of
Yeah.
Buddhism, according to the
Which
Nyingma school.
include the previous each time. So
Yeah.
Dzogchen being the ninth includes all of Buddhism,
Yep. Yep.
all the vehicles.
And so it you start to discover that there is an awakening, and then there's fully awakened. When
Yeah.
you're fully awakened, you're not you can't, people on earth can't see you. You've suddenly
Okay.
vanished into light. Okay.
Yeah.
uh,
You become a ball of light,
unless
essentially.
unless you as a Buddha choose to, be seen, and you
So
can
that's another
manipulate
thing
nature.
that's another thing begging to ask you here is essentially talking about that ball of light. Or we might call it an energy signature and reincarnation. Because to be completely honest, I'm kind of split on the issue because here I am, this radical non-dualist,
Yeah.
and yet I also have these Dzogchen underpinnings. So I'm kind of like in between worlds. I
Yeah.
honestly don't have an opinion, but I'd kind of like to have one.
Right. Right.
So part of
Yeah.
me wants to believe in reincarnation, and the other part of me has had an experience that directly showed me what we would call my energy signature.
Hmm.
And that's why I end up using one of your beautiful photographs that you took of a sundog,
Yeah.
because it was
Thank
that
you.
shape essentially. That
Yeah.
what I saw was that shape. And
Uh-huh.
yet from a radical non-dual perspective, we would say, well, there's nobody in here, so what the hell, if there's no identity, what the hell would come back? And
Hmm.
yet so what, how would you how would you talk on that to someone like me who kind of wants to believe in reincarnation, and yet on the other hand is being pulled in three different directions at the same time? What is the understanding there from your side of reincarnation and the energy signature, for example?
Well, first of all, I'd say you already have the answer. You're just not listening to yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, okay, so with reincarnation, you don't, and I would say not reincarnation, I would say rebirth,
Okay.
because reincarnation implies that there's this self that keeps going,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and it's not really a self. It's this energy. It's this consciousness. It's these all this that you've
Yeah,
set in motion
it's a
that
pattern of
you
energy
identify
or
with.
a energy
Yeah.
signature, energy body, but it's not, has nothing to do with the personality. So that's one thing Buddhism
Not
would say, is
really.
they would say they don't we don't in Buddhism we
Little
should
bit.
say we don't believe in the soul as personality,
Right.
because it's very obvious to us that the personality is essentially a energy body and brain generated delusion.
Yeah. So your life, this moment, this moment, this moment, as you go through each moment in your life, you're actually reborn. Everything about you
Yeah,
is completely different. You're not the same
yeah,
person who started this conversation.
right.
Yeah,
That's
even
terrifying of the
now.
seeker, but the way I
Yeah.
put it is I say the separate sense of self is like a candle flame or a
Yep.
waterfall. It
Yep.
seems like a stable thing, and it's still there,
Yep.
and it's not, the candle flame isn't going around the room. The
Yep.
waterfall isn't it's still stably there, but it's so
Yep.
ever changing that it's hard to even call it a static thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was primarily why I had an earthquake with my introduction to Dzogchen, is because of this sense of being here but not being here.
Yeah.
This
Presence
this
absence is like
this
that. Presence hyphen
this
absence.
this I'm everything, I'm nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not the person I was in this moment.
No,
No, I'm this
not the
person, but
person
I'm
at
not really
all.
that person because I'm already somebody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you're with an introduction to Dzogchen, you have to learn to be relaxed with in being in a state of complete instability. Just,
Mm.
you are in a storm, you're in the eye of a storm, and you're
Exactly right.
you're
Yeah.
completely relaxed.
Yeah.
And you have this back and forth between being still and being smashed into the winds.
And it's because you're identified with the eye of the hurricane rather than the
Yeah.
debris in the hurricane itself, right? Like that's
Yep.
how I
And
see it.
then,
Like even if I'm flailing around and manically chatty, there's such a
yep.
stillness and emptiness inside and behind that if I sit here silently for 12 hours or I flail around manically, it's all the same in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to get very accustomed to that. So
Yeah.
that's how I was, in a very, very uneasy state after my introduction. It wasn't like,
Mm,
okay, now I've arrived. It was like, now what?
scary.
Now
Yeah.
what? So
Mm,
I needed to find a way to deal with that. But I wasn't about to, simply go back to my old ways because I discovered
right.
something, the most incredible thing ever.
Yeah.
And that's a few
Great
months
treasure.
later, I encountered Namkai Narbu, and he he didn't say very much to me, but I understood just intuitively what he was saying, and all of a sudden I'm just calm. So he explained carefully the difference between sutra and tantra, the difference between the Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, sort of talking about how okay, so the Hinayana, you're living uh, a virtuous life, which is the foundation. It's so important.
Yeah.
The Mahayana, you're living for other people, ready to help. The Vajrayana, you're transforming everything. So, I mean, like you
Mm,
ask a Vajrayana
transmuting. Yeah.
practitioner if is it a wild ride to be a Vajrayana practitioner? Oh yeah, it's it's
Yeah.
incredibly wild. It's nothing like,
Yeah.
like it can't even be explained.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get to Dzogchen, and it's just your mind going into the nature of mind. And so it's really not a practice of mind like all the other vehicles. Now it's a practice of the nature of mind, which is
Yeah.
what Dzogchen means. And so he explained that to me. And then all of a sudden, through some, direct transmissions and just very careful things he said to me, both personally and at the retreat I was at, things that really uh, sunk in. And all of a sudden, okay, now I could be a Dzogchen practitioner because the
Primed for
the
it.
storm didn't mean anything now. Now it was
Right.
now it was sort of back to emptiness.
Right. Whether there's a
And
storm or not,
it doesn't matter. This
there's
is
this
just
internal stillness and calm either way. Yeah.
yes. And so he settled me down, which basically is bringing me to the second statement of Garib Dorji, which is one definitively decides upon this unique state. So
Yeah.
so I couldn't definitively decide upon it because I was getting beaten up by this realization. I mean, I don't know, that sounds very strange, but the realization itself beat me up really
Yeah.
bad.
It's bittersweet.
Yes,
There's it's
yes,
not, people think it's all just what they would consider to be good, but it's bittersweet.
yes.
Yeah.
And it was I needed that help. I mean, so I needed to have a teacher to help me to make that next step. And so then in the coming year, I was practicing Dzogchen, and then I had this near-death experience. I had a heart procedure,
Mm. Ah.
and so with that, um, when I died, I went at it with a sense of humor, and I'm like, well, if I died, I knew there was a chance I could die. Okay, I'm on the table, and
Might as
I
well keep it light. Yeah, it's
yep,
so heavy and dark.
I
Might as
I
well
did
keep it
this.
light. Yeah. Yeah.
I when I was going under, I said bye bye people, something like that. I just waved, see ya, and I was instantly light. This timeless luminosity.
Wow.
It wasn't going down a tunnel. It wasn't, this gradual thing. A lot of people with near-death experiences talk about this black void, and then
Mm.
you notice a light and you travel towards it a long distance. I instantly went to that light, and I completely disappeared. I lost all memory of myself. There was no time. And so I describe it as being there for an eternity.
Mm-hmm.
I was the light for an eternity.
Yeah, still are. Always have been.
and still am without, I mean, you can't undo that. But I was in
Yeah.
that state of having completely integrated myself with the what we call the Dharmakaya,
Mm.
uh, and so that's our real nature, that light. So
Yeah.
I had already
Yeah.
been I'd been accustomed to it, but I never had anything close to this type of experience. I mean, this
Yeah.
was just
Right.
like, wow.
Because I
And
had something similar, but mine didn't go that far. It was during my
mhm,
Kundalini awakening at 24, 3 years before
mhm.
liberation, where I saw a
Oh,
tunnel. It wasn't dark though. It was a
yeah,
tunnel of glowing light with a light at the end of it, but it was all
yeah,
brilliant white light. But I didn't go into the light. I wasn't liberated
okay,
at that point, and I still
yeah.
suffered after that. But you basically went all the way
I
and were
just
that.
I appeared there. I was transported. It was like, give
Yeah,
me up,
for
Scotty.
sure. Yeah.
There I was. And so I say, it sounds irrational, but I was there for an eternity.
Yeah.
And then I started to
And there's nothing
notice
wrong with the
little,
irrational, right?
no,
Irrational is the
and
most beautiful
and
thing I could think of.
our earthly logic doesn't make sense when it comes to
Right.
reality.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, me
Exactly. The
describing
real
it is
reality.
it's kind of nonsense, really, because it's
Yeah.
like the reality, you can't talk about it. The
Yeah.
actual
Exactly.
light, I mean, if you say it's light, that's incorrect, because it
Yeah.
was brighter than anything you've ever seen.
Right. And I've heard that
You
they say
know,
that in most traditions. It's like a million suns. Like you
a
can't describe it.
million
There's
suns.
nothing like it on Earth. You can't even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, you could look at light that's so bright it would burn your eyes out and it wouldn't even be
But it didn't
close.
hurt you. Yeah.
Dull by
Exactly.
comparison. Well, and there was no body, there was no self. I
Right.
was the light.
Right.
So I was there for an eternity. And then I started to notice little splashes of color, and I could hear little bits
Oh.
of sound, and I could feel this vibration and the rays of light coming from it, and just sort of like,
Wow.
just this energetic appearance. Sort of, it was sort of like down to my right, but I didn't have a body. I didn't have which is my
Yeah.
right, which is my left, which is up, which is down.
Wow.
So I noticed that, and I sort of moved into that without being a body or a self. And then I started to develop more consciousness, and so I started to remember, oh, I think I was a person a
Oh
long time
wow.
ago. This is
A
reminding
long
me of
time
that
ago. Wow.
experience
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
And I started to think
Wow.
about that, and then I thought about, well, should I go back there? And I didn't want to at first, but this radiant light is its ultimate bodhicitta.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to go back. I knew
Mm.
that's what I had to do. So I had to make an effort to become who I was.
Wow.
And so I spent it feels like decades, or maybe over 100 years. I was doing these mudras, and I was chanting these various chants, and I was remembering my life, and
Wow.
I had to reassemble my life. So like what
Wow.
we take for granted in life is we just fabricate our existence, right? Well, it wasn't so easy for me to come back and do that, because I
There's a
I could
lot
barely
that goes
remember.
into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so
So
bad, is it?
no, it's
Life.
not so bad. so so I made that effort to come back, and I just stayed very focused on doing these practices. And it was kind of a wide variety of mantras, and I was forming mudras that I don't even know how to do those, but I
Yeah.
inherently knew
Interesting.
how to do it, and I think that's from past lifetimes, because I
Mm.
I I became aware of my past lifetimes
Wow.
uh, eh, through that, but also I was aware of past lifetimes before this happened, and
Wow.
so I just had to work really, really hard to assemble my body, to assemble my life, and I was trying to remember who were the people that I knew in my life, who's worrying about me, they want me back. And I started thinking, well, I could come back. I wouldn't need to be like I was. I could just be in my body, and I could stay in this radiant state.
Bring the light, bring the true nature
Yeah,
back into the
yeah.
human
I
experience.
thought I could do that, but I didn't think that was a very compassionate thing to do. I think it would freak people out. so I tried to really get
Yeah,
back to the person
bring
I was,
enough of the personality back to
at
not freak
least just
people out.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but I was still quite a bit different when I came back. People
Yeah, I
could
bet.
see that.
Wow. The way I
Um,
like to put this is, I say we are shadow creatures in an ocean of clear light.
yeah, that's
And now it rings even truer
that.
because of what you
That's
just said to me. Even
that's
my own
yeah,
words ring even truer based on what you just said to me.
yeah.
It is
I
so
mean,
beautiful.
that's I what I saw. This Earth,
Yeah.
this universe. I saw the whole universe. It just looked like a little dot. The whole universe,
Wow.
because I
Yeah.
was in such vast space, and
Wow.
I could see other universes, and it was
Wow.
this infinite array, and all the everything, life everywhere. Amazing. People ask about the
Yeah.
cosmos. Did you see ET? So, well, not exactly, but I could sense that there was life everywhere in the universe and multiverses
Yeah.
too.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so the first thing I thought of when well, not the first thing, but one of the things that I noticed when I was looking back is it's such a dull place. All these stars
Mm.
didn't look bright at all. They looked very dull. And it
Compared to
was
that light.
compared to
Yeah.
that light, it was very, very dark and dull.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so
This is like a shadow realm in comparison. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
really is. It really is. But
And
we're
not
still in
just
the
because
light.
of the solidity, but because literally this is, and not in a bad way. I'm not shitting on the physical world, but this
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
shadowy dreamscape
it
compared
is.
to the luminous dream stuff that it's
It
composed of. Yeah.
it really is. It's a really good way of explaining it, because our own ignorance of our real nature creates a shadow. We're pulled away from the light by our own lack of
And
awareness.
that separate sense of
So
self, that ego mind, that's the shadow. Yeah.
yes, so we can dispel the shadow by awakening, and there's nothing that says we can't. It's something
Yeah.
anybody can do.
Yeah. It's
It's the easiest
exactly.
thing you can do ever. It's just that's what makes it so hard. It's just
Exactly. It's too simple to do.
it's
It's
too
too simple.
simple. Yeah, because
It's
as soon
too
as you
effortless, too simple, too fundamental, and that's why it's missed, because
yeah,
and that's the strangest thing too, is from the seeking perspective, it's impossibly subtle, and yet from the awakened perspective, it's impossibly obvious. It's like, how is everybody not just
that's right.
always like, how it's almost impressive that there can even be a seeking mind from the awakened
Yep.
perspective. It's like, it's almost impressive that there can even, anyone could even be tricked for even a second,
How
and
can
yet
this
it could
exist?
last 100 years. It's like, it's sad, but it's also almost impressive. Like, wow, how's that even possible? That's really,
How
wow,
can
well
you
done. It's a neat
how
trick.
can you work so hard at being deluded?
Yeah, yeah. It takes a lot
That's
of
what
talent to be
everybody's
fully
doing.
deluded. Yeah.
And
I
because it
call it
takes
being
a lot of work.
successfully confused,
And
from like a Zen
yes,
perspective. Successfully confused.
that's exactly right. You nailed it. I
I
mean, that's
enjoy that there
perfect.
seems to be two of us right now and that we're having conversation, and that
Mhm.
the content of that is so timelessly luminous. It's brilliant.
Mhm.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
It's
that's
enjoyable.
exactly it. We catch these glimpses of that light, and so we try to grab it. And as soon
Yeah.
as we do
Trying to
that, it's gone.
grasp the rainbow. Yeah.
You can't grasp it. That's the trick. You have
Pawing
to
at the
just
images in the
relax.
mirror.
Yeah, that's yes. Yep. Cat logic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's how I usually describe there being ultimately no free will. I'll use the word ultimately as a qualifier there
Yeah.
because it can get sticky otherwise. But
Yep.
if you take a laser and you move it, the cat's gonna chase it. It doesn't have a choice.
Right.
It's not like it sits there and goes, "Well, do I feel like chasing the laser today?
No,
All
let's
right, I'll
think
go
about
ahead."
it.
It's just automatic. And we're the exact same way. We just don't.
Yep.
It's more subtle to notice that because we have a more complexly evolved neocortex or whatever it is. We have
Yep.
this very robust illusion of self and free will, even though there
We
isn't.
just we just work harder at it.
Yeah. So
It's not
that's
not as
another
ready.
question for you, is from a non-dual yet Buddhist perspective.
Mhm.
Um, how would Sok Chen answer this, or how would you personally answer this as well? Like the idea that it's realized there ultimately is no free will, and there's no person who has agency or will, that we're more like action figures being moved by this luminous ocean of light. So if that's the case, then what of karma, right? Like, just like we took apart the word reincarnation and we call it rebirth because it's different than the concept reincarnation. So what about the concept of the average, the masses, how they view karma, as opposed to, how would you speak on karma, for example, with regard to choice and free will?
Yeah. Well, I think we do have choice. It's just not it's not something we understand. The choice,
Mm,
I would say, um, we make the choice to not be awakened. We make the choice
mm.
to make an effort to keep
To
being
continue to be
ensnared by,
self-deceptive. Yeah.
yeah, we're self-deceiving. It's our choice to do that. um I think when you encounter this luminosity directly, you see that choice or no choice, neither one really exists. So
Because
it's
both
not,
are imaginary limits, essentially.
they're
Yeah.
both limits. And so that luminosity is, there's no limit to that. There's no limit
Yeah.
whatsoever. So I don't think you can take a point of view, a fatalistic point of view, and say that we have no choice,
Right.
because it uh, it is, we need to take, in order to awaken, we have to have the proper key, which is
Right.
bodhicitta. So
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah. Yeah.
aspire to awaken, which is a compassionate.
And that ties in biologically too. Like, the more compassionate you are, it actually releases an endogenous,
Yep.
subtle form of naturally occurring non-addictive amphetamine, which actually boosts cognition, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate how Sok Chen is a form of middle way, even though it's all encompassing. It's also the middle ground between eternalism and nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yep.
doesn't, it avoids all the conceptual pitfalls of imaginary limits in a way.
Yep.
That's what I love about it.
Yep. But I think it probably also looks at eternalism and nihilism in a different way than it does at other stages of Buddhism, because
Right.
in because Dzogchen is self-liberating, we would look at, uh, everything is good, all is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you don't, even though you can explain to someone why eternalism is incorrect or why nihilism is incorrect.
It's just
And I
intellectual,
guess I'm using the
conceptual,
language
rational.
of
Yeah.
my teacher would say just incorrect. He was also a professor at a university. so so sometimes some people have called me out on that, saying, well, it's not, how can it be incorrect if all is good? That type of thing. But
The wrong
the
view.
so okay, you
And
have to
that's
use
good
the
too.
right language.
Yeah.
so um so I think that uh our when we are in a state of dualistic limitations, we have far less choice. So the more confused you are, the more enthralled with dualism,
Mm,
defending ego, really trying to say, nope, self and other are two different things, and you're defending that. Actually, you have less control. So you're trying to control
yeah.
this state, either you're trying to say
And
ego is everything.
maybe that's why the ego's trying to control, because
Yeah,
from that perspective, it has no control.
yeah,
That's an interesting way of looking at it. It's
yeah,
refreshing.
there's just no control at all,
Yeah.
if you're under those constraints. Now,
Sure.
when ego disappears, now you realize there's total freedom and no limitations. So you're not under the a constricted, um,
Yeah.
you're not under any constraints.
So
So
you go
fatalism
from this to this.
would say, well, it's all preordained. You have no choice. Well,
Mm,
not if you have total freedom, not if you've been
right.
liberated. So
So it's
at each
beyond both.
stage,
Yeah.
and I kind of look at awakening or liberation as having different stages,
Sure. Me too.
because that's how it happened with me. And
Okay.
now when I became Dharmakaya, that was full enlightenment. But then to come back, I decided
Literally enlightenment. Yeah,
it
light.
literally was. There was no me, it was just the light. But to come back, I recreated my confused state of mind, this person I am who
Thank you for that.
lives like
I'm glad you're here with me right now, for example.
I'm glad I'm here too.
Very
So
grateful.
so I'm not telling people that I'm enlightened. I'm telling people that I'm purposefully confused.
Exactly. See? Exactly
But I've
right.
tasted the Dharmakaya light. I have been that condition.
Yeah.
And so my purpose of being here is to write and to talk to people like what we're doing today.
Sure.
We're having this discussion and other people will be listening to it.
Yeah.
Although it
You
seems
might
like
say
just a very personal discussion between us here.
that's good too, right? It's all
It
encompassing. It's
is.
all here. Thank
Yep.
God there's some remnant of personal. Thank God that you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. I really, man, I really love this conversation. This is so potent. I love it so much. Yeah, I guess you could say when I was
Me
24,
too.
I witnessed the gates to that light in a way. It's like
Mhm.
I did have a tunnel type. So I had a Kundalini awakening at
Yeah.
24, and then at
Well,
the
that's like,
culmination of that experience, I ended up. It was kind of like being in two places at once, where I was fully in my body and saw the room around me very clearly, but I was also in that other realm, and I was at the kind of the gates to that light, if you will. I
yeah.
had a tunnel of glowing cloud, of white glowing cloud type light,
Yep.
and that light at the end of the tunnel, which ended up calling itself the original light.
Mhm.
I always wondered what it would call itself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
The source or the Dharmakaya. Yeah.
yeah, and then 3 years later, I witnessed that energy signature, which was a
Mhm.
dodecagonal trapezohedron. It seemed like, but if
Oh
you were to
wow.
render that two dimensionally, it's that diamond shape that the sundog,
Oh,
the
that's
light.
why.
So, and it was
Okay.
brilliant white light. So I thought,
So
oh
that's why
man,
you
like
really like the.
so. Then I went on Google and I was trying to find a really good picture of a sundog that had that crisp diamond shape, and then eventually I came across your profile on Facebook. I saw you were at a Soak Chan. I saw Keith Dowman in a picture with you, and I saw that image, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a brilliant image. I wonder where he got that. Then I saw your name at the bottom, and I thought, oh my God, he took that picture. Whoa, what a
Yeah.
perfect image, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I was.
I ended up using that for my YouTube channel banner background,
Yeah.
and it fit just perfectly because the image was just centered just right in the way YouTube
Uh-huh.
uses the thing. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I
Cool.
really appreciate
Cool.
that, and
Yeah.
it's the most beautiful. I think it's probably the best picture of a sundog I've ever seen, and then
Oh,
just
well, thank you.
like, what are the odds, that you just happened to be there at that moment and
Hmm.
captured that is just tremendous.
Yeah, I think that day it was probably 30 below zero.
Wow, where
I
were
live in
you when that happened?
northern Minnesota. That's where my
Oh
house is.
wow.
That's where I'm talking
Oh,
from right
I'm in
now.
Iowa.
Oh, okay.
I'm
You're
right
just
below you.
you're right near me. Okay.
Wow, negative 30. My God. I think
Yeah.
the coldest it's ever gotten here in this house was well, in the house, but I think it was like negative 14 was the
Yeah.
negative 11, negative 10. It's about the coldest it gets. But yeah,
You're
Minnesota.
down in the
I have a
tropics.
few friends up there, a few awakened friends in Minnesota, and I know yeah, boy. Yeah, the
Yeah,
tropics compared to that.
we're
That's
gonna have
funny.
to meet in person one of these days.
For sure.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
it's I actually go and I sit outside and practice. I practice tumo when it's
Ah,
35 below zero,
yeah.
and
Sure.
I take my shirt off. I just sit there,
Yeah,
for
you get wet sheets and steam them dry.
kind of do. Yeah, everything. You do generate a lot of heat.
Yeah.
I first time I generated tumo it was by accident at a retreat, and my
Oh yeah.
teacher he thought that was really funny. But that was, it's because I have been a Buddhist in past lifetimes, and
Yeah.
I've been a teacher in three lifetimes that I can remember. I was a teacher
Wow.
in Tibet or the Himalayas, and so I'm actually writing a book about that. It's just about ready to go
Mm,
out for publishing. I'm just
excellent.
going through the proofreading notes right now.
I'm
So
gonna have to read all your books now. I don't
yeah.
ever read books, but I'm gonna have to. It's too
Well,
congruent with what I've experienced. There's too much kinship not to.
yep. Well, it'd be wonderful. Thank you. I
Yeah.
hope you get a lot of benefit from it. I think I feel like this book that I'm finishing up here is actually much stronger than my first one,
Mm.
but it's a lot longer too. It's 138,000 words right now, and I'm just like I say, I'm going through the last time getting. I had got my manuscript back from my proofreader, and so I'm going through that now, and it's kind of interesting. I should probably grab it here if I can. I put it in a
Oh
metal
wow.
case, and so
The
you can make
frog.
the frog.
I like it. That was my first kind of spirit animal type thing. When I was a little boy, I collected frogs. And then, from a shamanic perspective, you could view this as you know, you can jump to great heights and come back just like you
Right.
did. You go to the ocean of clear light, Dharmakaya, then you come back as Robert, and
Yeah.
and we're grateful to receive you as Robert and
Yes.
as the ocean of light as Robert. And
Mhm.
another way I would put that is I would say the birds are really good at landing.
Yes. But
I've noticed the birds are really good at landing.
what inspired me to write this one? Well, a lot of it had to do with my near-death experience, but uh, and I should say my near-death experience by far more amazing than anything that had ever happened before. I mean,
Mm,
even as wonderful as the introduction to the nature mind was, that was amazing. Understanding emptiness, amazing. This was, out of the
yeah.
ballpark. It was that kind of
I
amazing.
have a lot of awakened friends that they get older and they've been awakened for a few decades and then suddenly they just become obsessed with hearing about other people's near death experiences.
Oh, really? Oh, very cool. Well, because
So it makes sense.
it's totally open during death, so
Yeah.
we experience that ineffable condition. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
This started as a years ago, before our Dzogchen. I About the time when I was doing a lot of emptiness practices. Started to wonder where I was during the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, and like
Uh,
so many students, like, oh, I hope I was one of his disciples, and
one of the
like,
top five.
wouldn't that be great if I could remember that?
Yeah, that would
And
be.
yeah, it would. And I started to see this. I wondering if I had seen Buddha Shakyamuni, and I remember this just like it was yesterday. That I remember seeing Buddha Shakyamuni, but
Whoa.
I was just a frog. I was just, or maybe a salamander or
I
something, but I
love
was
it.
just this frog floating in a swamp.
A
And
very a very blessed frog to be in the
yep,
company of the Gautama.
yes, and I saw him walk through the forest at night, and he was glowing, and he looked
Wow.
at me, and I sort of fell into this deep state of contemplation and samadhi.
Yes.
and he walked past me and into the forest, and everything in the forest was just in reverence. And then in while in this state of contemplation, an animal ate me. I was eaten. And I remembered it, and I
Wow.
remembered my death, the going through the death bardo into the next lifetime after that.
Wow.
Um so I thought, well, this would be, why don't I, at first I started writing about it because I just have this desire to write. But then I realized that I wanted to do this because this is why I came back.
Mm.
So I worked on it this last year, and fortunately my business, everything went to I'm an architect by my
Ah.
profession.
I was gonna say, by the
So,
way, the light that I encountered, it not only called itself the original light, it called itself the architect.
oh,
And
really?
and for some
Wow.
reason I like decided not to speak that out loud because it has that. But then you saying that I had to, it had
Oh,
almost like almost a Freemasonic light type of
sure.
vibe to it because I am the architect. I thought,
Yep.
okay, yeah, I've heard you called that
Yes.
before. Sure. Yeah, sure you are.
Yep. Yep. Right.
Brilliant,
Well,
brilliant.
I'm literally an architect. I have my, my licenses up there.
Literally on every level, it turns out.
That's what I was doing before we started talking.
I love it.
On a project.
Yeah, when I had that experience, at first when I was I was in this astral samadhi after a Kundalini awakening. This is all within a 10-minute period, of course, just fast paced, But
Yeah.
I see the light at the end of the tunnel when I'm in that type thing, and it says I am the original light. But then it kind of threw me outside of that, and I was in the physically manifested universe seemingly, and then it showed me different layers of light and how it all composed. But at the very end, it said I am the architect, and it showed me
Wow.
this underlying fabric of light that is stretching across the seemingly infinite universe. And I was still in the
Uh-huh.
human body at this point, so
Yeah.
I'm in two places at once. So the human limit couldn't grasp that infinitude, and so the experience ended.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was the last thing the light said, is I am the
Yeah. As soon
architect.
as you grasp
Showed the
it.
infinite structure of light, and my mind just went, nope, can't.
Yep.
And it came
You're
back.
trying to reify it, and that's where you make a mistake. It cannot be
Yeah.
reified. That's
And I
when
was
we go
still in
back
the
into
seeking mind in those days. Even though I'm in this astral samadhi, I'm also from in that seeking energy
Yep.
at that time,
Yes.
3 years before liberation. So it's interesting
Yep.
how that works. Yeah.
Yes.
I am the architect, and of course you are. Or the way, or this character, I'm a prolific street magician, an illusionist. Of course you are. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I
Yes.
can know how to make it look like I did
It
something.
also,
Well, sure, of course you are. Of course that metaphor is going to be embedded there. And of course, Robert's an architect, and Andrew's a street magician, an illusionist. Like, of course.
right. Yep.
Uh,
Oh, I should show you. We still have time here?
yeah, we still have about 15 minutes left.
Okay. This is a painting that I did after
Oh,
my
I wanted to get into
experience.
painting. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
And
It's like
I
a
think people,
Monet, Van Gogh, yet it's
yeah.
got
Well,
kind of the color use is
well,
yeah, kind
yeah,
of
Van
Tibetan
Gogh was
almost in a
kind
way.
of an inspiration because I struggled. I couldn't paint it, and I was telling various friends,
I
artist
love it.
friends, that how do you paint that? I was trying to paint the experience
Yeah.
because
And I love the use of
really
the white,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, I said, well, I could just do a white canvas and that would be it. But
Yeah, exactly.
I was trying to explain this journey back into my body. So that's what
Mm,
this is. So the
yeah,
white field is
beautiful.
that Dharmakaya light, and then the colors, tried to make them look like they're moving, kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
vibration. So,
Yeah.
Van Gogh is exactly the answer, how to do that technique
Yeah.
wise. And then just
I
down
love it.
here in this dark corner, this is the multiverse, and the universe is just a tiny dark spot. The whole universe, this
Yeah.
immense thing we call the universe.
Which from our perspective is functionally infinitely vast, and yet
Yes,
that's a
yes.
tiny speck from the
It's just a
perspective of
tiny,
Dharmakaya.
tiny dot in this the Sambhogakaya dimension, the rays of light, the colors, the sound,
Beautiful.
vibrating, the swirling masses. And I don't know if you could pick it up, but even the white starts to swirl as it gets close to
Oh,
the
yeah.
color. I don't know if you can see that real good, but
Yeah.
so this is more like entering the Sambhogakaya dimension. So,
Beautiful.
if I mean, this area is like beyond, and it's so vast that
Yeah.
it's infinite in every direction.
It's
And no,
surprising we can even try to talk about it, type of deal.
yeah, exactly. You can't really. And so that was
Yeah.
the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya dimensions. So
So
all encompassed here. And
beautiful,
the
beautiful.
vastness between these dimensions is just
Yes.
amazing. So
Wow.
yeah.
Beautiful. So let's come back to we were talking about kind of like the stages of full enlightenment and
Hmm.
having multiple kind of shifts in perspective and the
Hmm.
boomies, things like that. How
Yeah.
would you kind of speak on your own experiences and your own understanding of that greater path, if you will? You know, we could say stream entry is the end of the lesser journey and the beginning of the greater journey.
Right.
And how so what kind of experiences, what kind of boomies, what kind of stages have you experienced in this lifetime?
Well, I well, I was meditating as an infant, and
Mm,
growing up in the
wow.
Midwest. You know, they know Lutheran and they know Catholic. They don't know anything else, right?
It's
As,
unfortunate. Yeah,
from Iowa, you know that.
I do.
And so nobody knew what to make of me. You know, it was kind of like, you know, what is this? And when I remember when I was 3 years old, I was meditating on my front porch, and I could recall meditating in past lifetimes. So I was just a 3-year-old,
Wow.
and my mother asked me, "What are, you know?" I'm looking at my mind, right? I'm sitting there cross-legged meditating. She doesn't know what that is,
Wow. Yeah.
and so she asked me what I'm doing, and what is that? What are you doing? And I said, monkey mind. I knew the term monkey mind.
So you didn't, and obviously you probably hadn't read that at 3 years old in the
Nope,
Midwest.
no exposure, no
Whoa.
exposure
That's
to it
so
whatsoever.
cool.
Yep. And of course, she didn't know what monkey mind meant, and so her and my dad made fun of me for years on end about me having an imaginary friend named Monkey. And I said, "That's not it." I got
Well,
angry
that's
with
funny
them.
too, because when I was a little kid around that age, I had a big stuffed animal called Monkey. It was a big
Oh, did
monkey,
you?
and it was my best friend, and I'd take it everywhere with me,
Oh,
and his name was Monkey. So
oh,
that's a
cool.
really weird parallel as well again.
Yeah, that is. It's very cool.
Hmm.
So I grew up in the Midwest, and I explored Christianity in depth, and I also rejected Christianity at a certain
Yeah.
point. Um, and
Yeah.
I was very, adamant. I wanted my mother to read the Bible to me. I wanted to learn everything I could about religion, and then I was very interested in philosophy, and I was very fortunate. I had an
Yeah.
uncle who was a Lutheran minister,
Ah.
and he also became a Buddhist. And he was
Ah.
very open to the idea, and he was very
Very cool.
philosophical. He taught humanities at a college, and just
That's one of my
a
degrees, by the way, is philosophy. Yeah.
is it
It's
really?
cool. Yeah.
Very cool. And so I wanted to really learn about all the different philosophies too, and
Yeah.
at a very early age. I mean, I'm talking
Me
like
too. Yeah.
10 or 12 years old. I was I was
Same
really.
here. Yeah. When I was about 12, I was doing comparative world religion intercomparing, and I would
Oh,
convince
cool.
myself that I was each religion for about a week to see what it felt
Oh,
like. Okay, this week I'm
yeah.
Jewish for the whole week. Okay,
Uh-huh.
next week I'm Christian for the whole week. Okay, this time I'm
Yep.
Sananta Dharma Hindu. Okay, this time I'm Buddhist. And eventually, when
Yeah.
I came across Buddhism, I thought, oh my God, this is it.
That's how I was too. It was, this is it. This is what
Yeah,
well, and that kind of makes sense because Buddhism doesn't require belief. It requires discovery and an open mind, and looking at things the way they are. It doesn't tell
yeah,
you what it is. It says you find out for yourself. That's,
right. That's part of what I loved about it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, me too. And yeah, so I came out. I didn't actually discover Buddhism until years later as an adult, and I had explored all the Christian churches and the different religions that were kind of locally available in the Midwest, which is not
yeah,
a very big number of
right.
religions. So, but yeah, I was definitely a seeker, like you're saying, and
Yeah.
I also felt like there was something just before when I was born, and I couldn't quite figure what that was, but now I've actually I have in uh, recent years I did figure out what that was. I have pretty strong memories of my previous death from
Ah,
my previous body, and I was actually just a child in Tibet. I'm imagining it was Tibet, but it was, there were in the 1950s. There were a lot of
wow.
there's a lot of war in that area, I had a bomb dropped on me, so I
Oh.
inadvertently wound up on this side of the earth.
Oh wow.
So I was lived in a nomadic family, and I remember I was supposed to go to monastery. My family was really excited about that, but there was an army coming up our valley, so we had to flee. And of course, like what armies often do, they clear the valley for the army, so in case
Mm.
there's any snipers or whatever. And I was one of the casualties. And I
Oh wow.
I think I found my survivors of my family from then, but I don't want to talk to them because
Oh
I might
yeah.
disturb them.
Yeah.
I saw a woman who's a little bit older than me, a few years older than me, who I remember as my
Wow.
sister. I saw her online, and I almost sent her a note,
Oh
and then I went,
wow.
oh no, no, back away. This isn't right.
Yeah, that's rough. I know what you mean.
But I just, and she was a Dharma practitioner, a very serious
Wow.
one, and I'm pretty sure she was my sister, but I can't prove it either, so I don't know.
Yeah. And I've
She was
noticed there's two types of people talking about their past lives, and the ones that seem more believable to me are the ones that are more like something traumatizing happened, and it's almost traumatizing to even remember that it happened, as
yeah.
opposed to, well, I was Cleopatra. It's like so
Yeah, talk
when
about
people always do that, sometimes people are like, well, I'm
yeah.
a Palladian ninth dimensional angel from, it's like okay, well, I always joke and I say, well, I remember my past life very clearly, and I was a pig shit shoveler for 100 years.
Yeah, yeah. You don't hear anybody bragging
But
about
I've
that.
noticed exactly. But the rebirth stories that seem to resonate as true with me tend to be, I wasn't a king or a queen. I was, something traumatizing happened, and to even remember it, to even remember the transition back into this birth was
Yeah,
traumatic, and they have this at least a shred of trauma tied to that. And for me, that seems more believable, and obviously not from the ego mind
right.
than, well, I was Cleopatra. And even Cleopatra wanted to be somebody more important. She thought she
Yep,
was the reincarnation of Isis.
yep. Well, I mentioned that
So
in my upcoming book about how sometimes when you start remembering past lifetimes, you might think you were somebody. But the other thing is you might be thinking you're somebody that you kind of worshipped, or you paid a lot of
oh,
attention to, somebody you thought was great, some
yeah,
celebrity that you've known in a past life, that type of thing, so you might
yeah,
might just be projecting
right.
your own infatuation with somebody rather than who you really were. So it's
Yeah,
a
because
different kind of memory.
technically you have access to the memory of every life.
You
And
really
so
do.
that can
Yeah.
get a little sticky if you enter into that layer and you become aware of one of your lives, because
Yeah.
all lives are yours in that
Yes.
sense. And none of them are actually real or unreal, but they're all within the the machinations of that Dharmakaya ocean of light, if you will. And so, yeah, you
Yes.
can kind of tap into the memories of any light. It might not
Yep.
necessarily be your energy signature's rebirth necessarily. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. That's exactly it. It's easy to get. I guess that's why maybe even though Buddhists acknowledge rebirth, they don't focus on it. It's not considered
Yeah,
particularly
yeah.
useful because you couldn't get wrapped up in it, and then
Because
it
it's something the ego
introduces
would
your
like to talk
duality.
about and focus on,
Yes,
and it
yes,
projects a sense of separation. And
yes,
even if it is the metaphysical case,
yep,
shut up and eat your soup, kid, type of
yep,
thing.
yep.
Focus on what's useful
Great.
now. Yeah, I know what you mean,
Yeah,
for
you're
sure.
really looking. Your practice is about becoming accustomed to the nature of mind. It's not about
Yeah, Rigpa. Yeah,
rehashing old lifetimes. You've
right,
already been
exactly.
there.
Yeah.
It's
Don't dwell on your past traumas and
yeah, it's
yeah, I know what you
yeah,
mean.
dwelling on your older brother when you were a kid. How come he was picking on you?
Yeah, being too attached
Something
to
like
that nice sports car you had in the life right before this one. Yeah, that you don't have
Right,
access to.
right. Yeah, I had you have you heard this said? I mean, it's a kind of a Poa teaching. The last thought in your previous life is the first thought in your next life.
Yeah, it's like
The last
the
thought in this life.
quality of consciousness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
you pick up where you left off, type of
you pick
thing.
up
Yeah,
where you left off. And where
yeah, I've
I
heard that before.
where I in my last life, I was we were fleeing from these soldiers, and my parents were singing songs of praise to the Buddha.
Wow.
and trying to keep us all, calm. And we were moving with our flocks up along the valley, along the side of the valley. And I didn't think I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and maybe I might not even been that old. And I was yelling at them, "Stop singing! We gotta get as far away from here as we can." I was terrified of these soldiers. And so then all of a sudden, bam! And I'm going through the death bardo. And when I was born, my parents were singing, and I was as far away from there as I could be. I'm literally on the other side of the globe.
Whoa. Oh,
And so,
wow. I didn't even
so
put that together. Yeah,
yeah, and so
yeah.
I
Wow.
could in order, when I did my previous practices, to remember my past lives, I had to remember down to when I was born, and then I could take that next step and remember my past
Wow.
life.
And your parents were
So
singing when you were born. That's beautiful.
yeah,
And
so I
did get as far away from there as possible quickly.
yes,
Interesting.
exactly.
Wow.
And coincidentally, not so coincidentally, what I remember being irritated with my parents because they were singing. Why are you singing? and and I explained this to my parents, each
Whoa.
independently, not in the same room at the same time. And they both said, "Well, how did you know that? You couldn't have known that. You were just born."
And
And I
nobody told you
explained
that
what the
probably
room
either.
looked like. I
Whoa.
explained that they were singing and they were hamming it up with each other because they loved to sing.
Wow.
And they were actually, that's
Wow.
where they met in college, when they were singing in a choir. And so here their son
Oh.
is being born and they're singing these
Wow, that's
songs.
so beautiful. This gave me
Yeah,
chills.
I know.
Wow,
But I was
that's
irritated
tremendous.
by it. It annoyed me.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
it's brilliant. So
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Wow, this talk went amazingly. More than I could have ever hoped for or dreamt for
Oh,
or expected. That's
I'm
and of course
glad.
it did.
This
I
has
knew
been
there was a
fun.
resonance there, but these
Well,
talks always go so much better than I could ever hope to plan,
I,
But I
I,
love
I
this.
think
This is
I
great.
think you and I share the same kind of sense of humor. So
Yeah, that's good
I
too.
think
And
that helps a
that's
lot.
yeah, I do. Yeah. Before and after awakening. You need that.
That's right. That's right.
Or as I always say, if you want enlightenment, lighten up.
There you go. Yes. It's perfect.
Oh man. Well, it's been a great honor and pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Same
This
here.
has
Same
been
here. I feel
tremendous.
the same
I do
way.
have to get going here in a minute, but
Yep. Ah, me
yeah,
too.
do you have any closing remarks on anything we didn't touch on or
I don't know. I think we covered all
yeah.
bases. I guess I could do a closing plug of my book.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's available on Amazon,
Beautiful.
and I believe this one will be on Amazon as well. A
Good,
spiritual
good.
autobiography spanning many lifetimes,
I love it.
and this is much more in depth with the death experience on this one. And so I think that'll be on Amazon as well, unless somebody from
Cool.
a publishing house returns my inquiries, which I'm, you know, who
Yeah.
knows if they ever will. So I know Amazon is a sure thing, so I think I'll just do
Yeah,
that.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think self-publishing might be the way to go these days. Yeah.
it is. And the reality is that I was told that this one, Timeless Luminosity, they couldn't fit it into a category. Didn't make sense. It's not really just poetry. It's not really just prose.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. Brilliant.
this one, you've never read anything like this before. If you ever pick this
Nice.
book up, you will be like, "What is that?" It's it's the
Good.
strangest thing, and the humor. My wife read it, and she said she didn't know whether she should laugh or cry, because there were times when she's just totally laughing, other times she's crying. Just like.
Beautiful.
And so it's a funny mixture. I was greatly inspired by Kurt Vonnegut, if you're familiar with Kurt
Ah,
Vonnegut. So
very
I
cool.
wrote it in a fragmentary style, but there's poetry and there's prose, and I have
Good.
a lot of poetry in there, but it's mostly about my past life memories and Buddhist practice, and the near death experience, and
Wow.
the Poa experience of entering the light, and all of that. So it's a funny
Beautiful.
mixture. So
Perfect.
So,
It's all encompassing.
all encompassing. Yes.
The great encompassment.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well, that's
Well,
beautiful. Thank you
thank
so much
you.
for your
Thank
time.
you for inviting me,
And
and I was looking
yeah,
forward to this.
me
I
too.
paid attention to some of your talks, and I
Yeah,
thought we'd
good.
have a good rapport here. So this is good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, beyond my
Yeah,
wildest expectations. Brilliant. Perfect.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We'll
Thank
talk again
you.
soon, brother.
Yep.
Have a good
Yep.
one.
Yep. You too. Bye.